Hello there, my name's Michael and I'm on a mission to rescue, rebuild, restore and return to full working order this 100-year-old Wurlitzer 105 band organ. Now this is the last video in the series of rebuilding the vacuum bellows. It's a lot more time consuming than I thought it was going to be. It actually took 5 videos, but this is the last one. We're complete. So stick around to the end and you'll see exactly what we've been working on. I don't think it came out too badly. Let me know what you think. Leave a comment, tell me what you like or don't like about the videos, and I'll try and adjust what I'm doing. Just trying to keep myself busy in retirement, but it would be nice if it had some lasting value. So I don't really have much more to say except let's get stuck in and watch this last episode. And stick around to the end and see the end result. Now that these 2 halves of the bellows have been fully covered, it's time to assemble them completely and finally. It's been a long time coming, but we should finish it today. If you've been following along, then you will have seen me make all these other parts. So now that we've got them all laid out and ready to go, this should be a quick and simple assembly issue. These little things are the first things we have to put in onto the edges of the bellows, and that will hold them rigid and firm. Before I put the leather on, I did make small subtle marks on the boards where these had to go. Now these are going back where they came from, where they were put 100 years ago, so the holes are already there. I just had to find them through the leather, but that wasn't very difficult. It was easy to do with a little run up and down with my thumb, and that little probe I had there, that worked really well. And they're going in quite easily. On one of these sides of the bellows, we only have the supports on one side, because once they're glued together, the supports on the other one will be in the middle and hold it together. So there's only 3 sets of these supports. So you see they went in quite easily. I found one that really wouldn't go in, not quite sure. Maybe I had it turned around the wrong way, but I decided I would just sharpen up the little end of it so it would go in a little easier. And that worked. That fixed it. That went well. They're all in and looking good. Now we have the 2 spacer bars that go between the 2 halves, and we have to notch out for the little metal rods we just put in. We notch them out so that they don't clash. And then these are glued in between the 2 halves. Best if I just show you. I'm ready to glue on these spacer strips that go between the 2 halves. And I had thought, where these are held together, these strips really do squeeze this leather between the wood there and the wood here. and that would make it even more airtight, less susceptible for the leather coming off. So that's okay there. And we have this piece that goes on there. But we have this in the middle, and I'm thinking we've got the space, so why not put a little strip in there, or there. I've seen people do this by just hammering a boatload of tacks in there, or upholstery nails. But I'm thinking if I take a strip of wood, cut it to the right length, round it, sand it, spray it a little bit of gold paint and make it decorative, then I think that would improve its functionality. So I think that's what I'm going to do. The first thing is to cut some strips the right width. I think it's just about 1/2 inch. I'll do a few extras because I tend to make mistakes. There we are. We got enough. Here I'm sanding them down a little bit and putting them in place and hoping that they'll do the job. On the one side, there's a complete full strip because we don't have these little metal bars. And a quick spray with gold paint and they'll look a little better. Now these are actually in between the two sides of the bellows, so no one's ever going to see these. It's just that I'll know they're there. Maybe it'll impress somebody one day. At least I know it's I've done what I consider to be a good job. Now using hot hide glue, I'm getting these strips in the right place and using a little nail gun to tack them in place. I have to work hard. This glue is supposed to be about 150, 160 degrees and it's very cold in the garage. I'm now masking off where I have to put a piece of leather up between the middle of those, between the middle of those two blue pieces of tape, because that's going to be a heavy vacuum, a strong vacuum in that chamber, and there'll be the possibility of air escaping or coming in from outside up between the gaps there. And I'm putting in the support at the end and clamping up so that we know that we're staying in plane. These two braces will also help keep it firmly intact while the glue dries. Well, I fixed the braces on underneath. That is to try and clamp the two halves together and keep them in a level plane here. So these two do that from underneath. This is the support that it hangs from underneath the top of the organ. I clamped these just to make sure they stay in the same plane. And this I have screwed on temporarily, just to hold everything in place here and here, because I still have to take this off and put in a piece of leather here to cover the gap. And I'll do that once I've let the glue settle. I'm going to let this settle overnight. We'll be back in the morning to completely finish it. I know I've been saying that a long time, but we are really close now. Cheers. It was a quick job to mark and trim these pieces. I'm using a brad nailer to fix them in place. Now the ones I'm cutting at the moment are not going to be rounded on the edge because this is the side of the bellows that will be inside the organ and no one will ever see it unless you put your head inside the organ. It's the ones that are visible on the back that I want to make more decorative. Well, I've got all the little pieces that I'm going to fix there. I need to sand them down, spray them a bit of gold, and then we can fix them in place. Just a little bit of sanding and we'll be good to go. Just taking the edges off and then we'll be ready to spray them. Now this is just a can of spray I got at Ace Hardware. I'm not really sure what colour it is apart from bog standard gold. This is a brad nailer. I have a healthy respect for these nailers. When I was putting the case together, I actually shot one of those straight through one of my fingers. It went through the nail, missed the bone, and came out the other side and into the organ in the wrong place. A bit painful and a little bit of blood, but actually it taught me a lesson. No real damage done. This is where I'm trimming a 45-degree angle off the end. It doesn't look like I have a jig set up or anything, but I'm lining them up with the mark on the bandsaw, so they're all being cut off the same. And now a quick little round them off on the sander, and they'll look good. Now these have two functions. One is purely decorative, but the most important one is that these hold the leather firmly to the bellows so that there's even less chance of an air leak. So this is the side of the bellows that faces out. If you open up the back of the organ, you will see this. It's not something people are going to see on a day-to-day basis, but I thought I'd round them off just to make them a little bit decorative. Now, one piece I missed there. There was a nail underneath it. It was the tack, little upholstery tack I put in there to hold the leather. That kind of rejected the brad nail. So I'll just put another one on there in a little while. Well, this is really exciting. I'm ready to just put the final few pieces on here, the valves basically, and then we should be ready for testing it. I'm going to start off by putting the flap valves in place first. They're the easiest, and I want to get these holes covered up, both sides, and then I can vacuum inside and clean out any last dust or bits and pieces that are inside the chambers. That's where I'm going to start. A small hole punched in each corner is where we will receive the springs that keep them a little bit taut. These two pieces of wood, they're spacers. The small one at the back, that is the amount of space I need between the cover, the valve covers, and then that quite wider piece, 3/4, that's the spacer from the edge of that to where the leather starts. Do you know, I don't know exactly what that measurement is. It was just a convenient piece of wood I had, and as long as they're all the same and they look good. And I'm trying to avoid getting these tacks into previous holes because this leather has been replaced before. There's a lot of age to it. Shows where people have been working on it over the years. This little strip across the middle, that's just to hold it down, so even if the springs did fail, the leather's not going anywhere. The vacuum holds it down, and then the air pressure will push it up to let the air out. It's very clever. Simple, primitive, but ingenious. And then we do the same thing for the other side. You'll see I'm putting a little strip of leather on top of the valve flap. That's just to give it some extra strength. There's no chance of it pulling out through the leather as it weakens with age. And now I'll test fit the cover for these flaps. It was all okay, so we just put in the 4 screws, and that part was completed. So now I'm ready to install the first of these valves. These are the ones with the spring steel. I've already made the leather gaskets. I've countersunk the screws. There's actually not much clearance inside that valve cover. So these are all ready to just screw in. So time for me to do some screwing. It's never a good idea to use power tools on wood pieces like this. They're too fragile. But rest assured, I've got the drill set to a really low torque, just to get the bulk of the work done, to save my wrists, getting a little bit of arthritis in there after all these years. So I use this to get them in place, and then I'll tighten them by hand. Tightening them by hand, you've got a bit more control over exactly how, there we go. You've got more control over how tight you actually make them. And then we'll do the same with the lower valve cover. Use the drill to get the screws in most of the way, and then actually tighten them up by hand. A really low torque, just to get the hard work done before we do some sensitive screwing with the screwdriver. Well, we're really making progress now. Got an awful lot done so far, and we only have a few parts left to put on. We only have a couple of valves to go in on the rear side, but on this side, which in fact is the underneath, all we have to do is get this hatch put on there. Now, I've had some issues with the holes in the original pieces being a bit too big, which means I had to use slightly larger screws. And then I had to drill out and put some dowel in, and you know, the usual thing when you're trying to match old and new. I'll get this one on first, then we'll turn it over, and we have these spring steel valves that go there, which cover that opening. And then the air gets sucked through this hole, out and down there. So this has to be all in a sealed unit. So that goes on there. So I've got this on the other side, and then these valves and valve covers on this side. So let's start with the hatch. I always use a stiff brush to go over the nap of any of these gaskets. That's the first time I've shown you, but I do it on all of them. That's to bring up the nap that will help it get a really nice seal. These screws on the top, I've used a cupped washer underneath it to prevent them from pulling into the wood any more than they did before. One of the reasons I had to replace so many parts is because the screw holes were just damaged too badly. So I'm trying to prevent that in the future by using cupped washers where appropriate. And again, I'm being very careful with the torque setting on the drill. I did test to fit these earlier, so it's not just a miracle that they suddenly fit beautifully. There's a bit of work behind the scenes to prepare all the holes, the gaskets, and the screws, and everything. And here you can see how that spring leather goes up and down and opens and closes the valve. And we're almost there. We're on the home stretch. Just putting these, basically, they're nothing more than just boxes to create an airtight compartment over these two valves. By this time, my wrists were beginning to ache quite badly. And to get a good seal, I tried to go back and forth across the screws to tighten them. A bit like you do tighten the bolts on a head gasket on a motor vehicle. There we are, all finished. I'm really quite proud of that. Let me know what you think in the comments.